to heal our nation. Put our hands on the fire and cleanse the wicked. Right now, all of them who does worship, greed and vanity must bow. Unity is the banner, so come together. I say, and this love is for freedom, it's growing stronger each day. Bring down the power of love, I say. The power of love, I say, is the greatest power to hell and damnation. Love to heal a nation. So rejoice in a rhythm of celebration. Come on. Lift your voice with a feeling of satisfaction as one. And let we move with a purpose, all freedom lovers. Hold tight. Stepping out of the darkness with one direction inside. Bring down the power of love, I say. The power of love, I say, is the greatest power to hell and damnation. Love to heal a nation.
Good week and welcome to ANU Asafo with your host, Brother Wole Ifa, and my co-host,
Brother Ifa Wumi Oshundele.
It's so good to hear your voice again, brother. But
indeed.
But before we get into that, shall we do the pledge?
Of course. We remember the humanity, glory, and suffering of our ancestors, and honor the struggle of our fathers. We will strive to bring new value and new life to our people. We will have peace and harmony among us. We will be loving, sharing, and creative. We will work, study, and listen so we may learn so that we may teach. We will cultivate self-reliance. We will struggle to resurrect and unify our homeland. We will raise many children for our nation. We will have discipline, patience, devotion, and courage. We will live as models to provide new direction for our people. We will be free and self-determining. We are African people. We will win. We will win. We will win.
Ashe, Ashe, Ashe. Moyuba. Thank you, Brother Ifawumi. Wow, here we are again for another week. This is my favorite place to be, and you're my favorite person to be talking to. How you doing this week, brother?
I'm doing great. I had a great week myself. I'm glad to be here today. We have an exciting show. I'm just so motivated.
Excellent, excellent. Well, let's get straight to it. Unfortunately, we start on a somewhat positive, a somewhat somber note. Late last week, in the last couple of days, a ship carrying African immigrants to Europe caught fire and capsized off of the coast of Italy. And this was Thursday, and it killed at least 114 people. And as it spilled hundreds of passengers into the sea, many of whom drowned because of not knowing how to swim, officials said. Over 150 people were rescued, but about that same number of people are still unaccounted for. So the death toll in this accident has passed 100, Italian officials have said. So we all here at the ANU Spiritual Order join our lead instructor and spiritual guide, Haru Yuya Asan Anu, in sending out our heartfelt condolences to the victims of this tragedy, their families, and all of the African people who risk so much to try to find a better way of life and opportunity outside of their homelands. Brother Ifawumi?
Yes, that really touched all of us here. It touched the community throughout the world for this tragedy that has happened. And many of these people, many of them were fleeing persecution. They said the boat started in Libya. So we all know exactly what has happened in Libya just in a few months ago. A lot of these places, are just unsettled right now, just not ready for to be up and running once a revolution has taken place. And I do feel so hard, or even pregnant women, drowning out there in the water. That's a horrible thing.
It is. And Sister Cynthia McKinney, former candidate for president and congressperson out of the state of Georgia, has announced on her blog online that it's her understanding that the U.S. is still dropping bombs in Libya today. So they were leaving a war zone in their home countries, going through a war zone and trying to make it to a better thing.
Well, this is what Africa brought to Africa.
I see. Well, moving on to a little happier news, a lot happier news. The big chief, Donald Harrison of the Congo Square Mardi Gras Indian Nation of New Orleans, is in New York City tomorrow. Now, it'll be Monday, October the 7th, 2013, at 6 o'clock p.m. at the King Juan Carlos I of Spain Center Auditorium at 53 Washington Square South, New York University in Manhattan. Now, the big chief is going to be taking part in an interdisciplinary seminar entitled Afro-Latino Soundscapes. Now, a lot of people are not familiar with Donald Harrison, although he, along with his former partner in crime, were the trumpet and saxophone players for the Jazz Messengers, the great band, the great legendary jazz band, which has nurtured so many musicians. Well, anyway, the big chief is, Donald Harrison was born in New Orleans in 1960 and grew up in a home environment saturated with the city's traditional music of brass bands, parades, modern jazz, R&B, funk, classical, world, ethnic music, as well as dance music. His connections to New Orleans roots were deepened by his father, who was the big chief of the Congo Square Mardi Gras Nation before Donald took over after his death. These Indian nations are a merge of the African and Native American groups that got together, both doing oppression and enslavement in this country in the 17th and 18th centuries. Now, the big chief is very well known. He's a groundbreaking musician. He recorded an album called Quantum Leap last year, which musicians and critics alike have termed the next step in jazz. So he also is the creator of the term nouveau swing, which is a style of jazz that merges modern dance music like hip-hop, R&B, soul, rock, and combines that with jazz and the New Orleans traditional music. So, in my personal opinion, the best saxophone player in the world today is a New Orleanian named Donald Harrison. Now, some can make an argument, and it's legitimate, that Bradford Marsalis, the brother of Wynton, might hold that distinction. But either way, if you can make it out to this lecture, and I'm sure he's going to give a little performance, it will be a truly, truly special and inspiring thing. And now, back to the global scene. Out of tragedy comes a new hope. A new cultural blog was formed Thursday of last week, and it was in response to a tragic plane crash in Nigeria. The blog is called Yoruba Culture and Tradition, and it is an African Yoruba tradition and culture blog aimed at enhancing the beauty and understanding of Yoruba culture, and most especially to increase the awareness of Ifa and Orisha spiritual systems. Now, this blog will be using verses from the Odu Ifa, the sacred Ifa, sacred scripture rather, and relating it to occurrences that happen in our individual everyday lives. Yoruba words and proverbs will also be used as a basis for topics covered. Now, this blog is started by the esteemed Araba of Oshobo, Ifayimi Elibuyibon, his daughter, whose name is Ifayimi C. Elibuyibon. And in her own words, she started this blog, she decided to write this blog on this topic because of an incident that occurred in Nigeria. An airplane crashed carrying the body of the late governor of Ondo State. He was headed on his way home to be buried, and the plane was full of his relatives, and the plane crashed, killing many and severely injuring several others. But luckily, among the survivors was the governor's son and the son of former Nigerian President Olusegun Obasanjo, who holds several distinctions in that country, including leading the country 2 times, 1 time as a military man, 1 time as a civilian, being the first person to pass on leadership from one civilian administration to another peacefully without military involvement. And it's a blessing that his son survived, and we're very happy for that. But in this first edition of the blog, the sister Elibuyibon explains the concept of Afua, which is Afua occurs when the spirit of the dead is not at peace or is angry at the living. Afua refers to a situation where several untimely deaths may occur within a small time frame after the death of a person in a family, household, or town in general is not celebrated correctly. The correct traditions are not observed. So Sister Ifayimi C. Elibuyibon has distinguished herself by carrying on the fine tradition of her father, the Araba, in reaching out and teaching. And we need that so much in the West, and we just want to wish her all the best with that and urge everybody to go and learn from her. We will have the connecting links to her and to Big Chief Donald Harrison's performance. We'll have that hopefully in the chat room, but if not, we'll have it in the archives versions of this. And finally, we want to let you know that we have a special guest waiting on the other side of this break, and his name, well, I'll let you talk about him, Brother Fab, because you're familiar with Oba Anpu. Will you tell us a few words, and then we'll go to break?
Okay. Well, I've been knowing Brother Oba Anpu for a few years now, and I actually met him while in the process of Pan-Africanism, and you wouldn't know uptown and downtown brother that you will find in Brother Oba Anpu. He has embraced African spirituality, and I think he started out in the Kemetic tradition. It's the same way that I did. But he eventually, through evolution, eventually went and embraced the Voodoo tradition, and under a great priest, and he has grown by leaps and bounds. And I just, it's so many words I can use to describe this brother. He's intelligent, well read. He's one of these brothers who was a hands-on kind of guy. He can point you in the right direction, and he can guide you in the right direction as well. And so few of us in the community have these type of qualities. He looks at everything. He doesn't look at everything in the box. He thinks outside of the box. That makes him a very special person.
He sounds like somebody we can't wait to talk to. But let's go to break right now. And we'll come back with Oba Anpu.
According to legend, there was a time when Earth was pure, free of all evil. Unicorns, pearl-paved pathways, skies so bright, no night, no problem. When only positivity polluted the conscience, and something went wrong. My name is Insight. Let's go. Waterfall slows down, breeze, the sun leaves. Cumulus clouds overshadow the area. A cave had appeared with a glowing interior. Inferior primates appeared at the seashore. Search for the knowledge in a natural resource. Mind file power in the force of a narrow path leads to sacred travelers that expanded to a huge community. Trees clouds down, make room for you and me. Machinery we use spread more pollution. Scientific breakthroughs form illusions. Positive intentions make the negative easy. Sleazy, spectacular species. Reach keys in life, mixing your own formula. Curing the conscious, develop the medicine. Practical principles expose better things. It's the God. Of your people. It's the God.
Okay, welcome back. It's 19 minutes after the hour, going on 20. You're listening to the ANU Asafo show with your host, Brother Ifa Wumi, and I'm Brother Wole Ifa. We're about to sit down and talk to Baba Anpu, who is the most fascinating person. Baba Anpu is a Pan-African nationalist who believes that our liberation lies in gaining true power. That's through economics, politics, intellectually, and most of all, spiritually. Baba Anpu believes that the only way to achieve this is through a profound and deep knowledge of self, rooted in an African-centered etymology and pediology construction, solely based on an African paradigm. And most importantly, to return to our original spiritual systems, like our Voodoo, Orisha, Netaru, Obasom traditions, and our spiritual cultivated ancestors. Baba Anpu is also what is known as an autodidact, which is a self-taught person. He shares that distinction, as a matter of fact, with the Araba of Osobo. We just mentioned him and his daughter, Ifayimi Elebuibon, another self-taught person. Oba Anpu is a child of the First World Alliance of Harlem, New York, which is the mother of all African-centered lecture circuits in the U.S. He was there where he spent 3 years sitting at the feet of some of the greatest minds in the African-based movement, including people like Dr. John Henry Clark, may he rest in peace, Dr. Joseph Ben Yakinan, Dr. Ben, Dr. Leonard Jeffries Jr., famed head, former chair of the African Studies program at City College of New York, Professor James Smalls, Dr. Marimba Ani, and Dr. Francis Krauss Welsing, to just name a few. Baba Anpu began building his library, or arsenal of books, and videotaped. He joined several African-centered and Pan-African organizations. He's a former member of the Association of Classical for the Study of Classical African Civilizations, the All African People's Revolutionary Party, which is founded by the late great leader Kwame Ture, also known as Stokely Carmichael, rest in peace, and the Black Holocaust Council of New Haven, Connecticut. He heads a study group which Nehesayu, but it means in the ancient Kemet language, awaken the people. This study group also serves as the Bridgeport, Connecticut chapter of the Association for the Study of Classical African Civilization. So without further ado, we'd like to say welcome to ANU Asafo, Baba Oba Anpu.
Welcome, family. Welcome to Baba Ifa Wunmi Oshendele and Baba Wole Ifa. Welcome, welcome.
Ashe, Ashe. Baba Anpu, please tell us a little bit. That was a pretty long introduction, but you've done quite a lot in your time. Would you please fill in some of the gaps? Tell us a little bit about your background that we may have not already covered, especially when it comes to your current spiritual walk.
Yes. I started out in the Pan-Africanist movement, and we all go through phases as we achieve certain levels of knowledge. I'll say this, that my introduction to, and I want to make a distinction, big difference between voodoo and vodun, huge difference. Voodoo, especially Haitian voodoo and others, use spirits that are not traditionally our original spirits, which in tradition I came up in is like a violation. The ones that we deal with only deal with our spirits. We don't deal with Islamic stuff. We don't deal with outside spirits that are not of our original pantheon. So that has to be clear. No Catholic saints, none of that. Originally, I was just, like most Pan-Africanists, patting the ground, dealing with our current condition, but there wasn't a spiritual connection. That's something that we lack, and I went many years dealing with that. I tampered with, African spirituality, but I would notice that there was behaviorisms that I noticed in the sisters and brothers that I'm saying, if I'm going to do this, I might as well stay in the streets. So that kind of turned me off. I said, one of the things I think about a spiritual system is it must have character development built into it. But I read a book years ago, Let the Circle Be Unbroken, by Sister Donna Richards, now known as Marimba Ani. And it asks some fundamental questions. Can we be African without African ritual? And that question alone opened my eyes up to who we are at the core, our core. And I began looking at African spirituality from that standpoint. Now, I'm saying all that to say this, that without the African or black fundamental spiritual basis, nothing we do is going to work. So that means we have to go back to the beginning. And this is something that I've noticed group after group after group that I would belong to lack that. And I would never commit to any of them because I saw that component was missing until I came across what's called Huye Vodun. I won't go into detail about that, but I'll say that much, that it was a complete system, and that's kind of what had me just go all in, all out. So that was my sojourn. Many years of lecture series, organizations, reading books, studying, study groups, to try and gain as much knowledge as I could of our plight and solutions to our plight. And in the end, I found out that if we do not return to our original spirits, you can call them Vodou, you can call them Orisha, you can call them Netaru, you can call them whatever you want. if we don't return to them in our original spiritual system, nothing we do is going to succeed. And to me, that is the foundation of where I stand right now.
Ashe. Thank you for that. That was clear. That was clear and informative. Yes, we've talked about your belief that a holistic approach has to be brought back, economic, political, intellectual, spiritual. But piggybacking off what you just said about going back to the roots, let's talk about your name. Your name is an interesting combination of traditional African system from different parts of the continent. Would you tell us about that?
Well, I had a roots reading done, and I found out where I lie, which side of my family I incarnated on, so on and so forth. And I picked Oba because the spirits had let me know that I was from a certain area in Nigeria, the Edo people, and so pretty much that's the title for King Oba. The reading also let me know that I was tied to, for the Greek term, because most people don't know what Anpu means. Anpu is Kemetic for Anubis. So that was given to me spiritually. I intentionally, even though I was in the movement for years, many people would change their name. I promised myself over 20 years ago I would not change my name, and don't ask me how I knew, until I was given a name, either through ritual or through spiritual means. And so I did not change my name until I was given that name by the spirits. And so that's where it comes in. We have a rich tradition, and we can actually pick and choose from wherever, as long as it's based in our history, our culture, our spiritual culture. And so that's how I combine those two names.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Now, Oba Anpu, you are a self-taught individual.
Correct.
And right now we're in this big transition about education, and more people are becoming aware to the notion that it is important to educate our own kids. And because education, like Carlos Freire said, is a form of cultural indoctrination. So being a self-taught individual, what are some of the differences you see in your own approach to knowledge in education that you find is different with some of your colleagues who've been, let's say, more formally educated?
Well, I was blessed, man. I was introduced to the Pan-Africanist movement by a good friend of mine. The brother, when I met him, he had 2 PhDs. 2 master's degrees. He was a research chemist for many years, and he also was probably one of the people that I've met that has more books than me. It's not many. Very well taught. He was the one that introduced us to the Harlem community. He had been going there for years. And I watched this brother who had a combination of, the Roots Foundation as far as our knowledge and history and the Western academia. But he blended them perfectly. So I was impressed with that. The differences are clear. It is very problematic to get degrees from our historic and cultural enemies. They designed their educational system. They designed it in a way that suits them. They're at the center, very Eurocentric. And we as being African people cannot embrace someone else's ideology, culture, history, so on and so forth, without it affecting us in many ways, deep ways, spiritually, so on and so forth. So the difference being, once you have a profound knowledge of yourself through studying African history, it opens up many areas of your being. Physically, of course, mentally, spiritually. And that knowledge alone transforms one. I'm not the same person now that I was prior to getting this knowledge. Every question that I'm presented with, I have to ask, how does that relate to my people? My reference point is always us. Everything I think and do, I always have to say, well, how does that relate to my people? I'm not thinking from a European paradigm, so therefore things fall in place. For instance, one of the things that I found out when I was going to Harlem was we had the intention as a group, we had the motivation as a group, but we lacked the funds. And I'm saying that to say this. When I looked at the enemy, even if they were doing dirt, they had resources behind them. Even if they had to sell drugs, they had resources behind them. I'm not implying that we should sell drugs. I'm just making a point that they made sure they had an economic foundation to whatever it is they did. And I noticed that we as a people would lack that. And I'll say this, that there's an issue here. We're talking about economics, which we need economics, politics, and culture. There's an issue here. We're going to open up a can of worms. Everyone knows that the European is steeped in his version of spiritual sciences that he uses to enslave the entire world. Everyone knows that even on his money, it's full of symbols. You know, most of us aren't symbol literate, but their money's full of symbols. Now, what happens in modern times when we, as spiritual people, have as the system of trade the use of the Europeans' money in exchange for initiation, so on and so forth? Do we do rituals to block these symbols on the money as we're exchanging hands with the money, with their face on it and with all the symbols on it? I'm saying all that to say this, that we have to think about this, that if indeed the European is putting, for lack of a better term, spells on his money, and let's say for an initiation it cost me $10,000, I'm giving up $10,000 of European money with 10,000 or more spells on it, and I'm exchanging hands with another brother or sister. We have to ask the question, does that affect us negatively? I'm saying that because you see rampant corruption in the majority of temples, priests, you know, doing all kind of dirty stuff and, you know, jujuing each other, so on and so on and so forth. I think that we need to look at that because it's not just a matter of us engaging in spiritual practices. We really have to look at what kind of energies we're exchanging when we're dealing with this Europeans' money, especially, you know, residuals that may be inside the money.
I see. On that same note, you know, you're the first guest we're having who's going to participate, who's agreed to participate in a new segment we're calling the hot button questions. The ANU Asafo hot button questions, and that's going to be conducted by Brother Ifawumi in a moment. And after that, he's going to do a cultural spotlight on voodoo. But you're an initiated voodoo priest, and
voodoo. To voodoo, there's a big difference, and that's why I pointed out in the beginning. Voodoo, and voodoo are not the same.
Please tell us about some of those different lineages of what started out as Vodun and has morphed into different things, if you would.
Well, I'll give you what I can. I'm not qualified to go in depth, but I'll give you what I can. It's pretty simple. We originally had a pantheon of spirits that we worked with. This is centuries before the European even came out of the caves. Those are our original elemental spirits, Neteru. We also have our Nananam Insamanfo, our spiritually cultivated ancestors. All of us have them. That is our root. our basis. Christianity has infected Africa for 2,000 years. Islam has infected Africa for hundreds of years. And others have brought this up. We have been educated by these Westerners, including the American, in a very patriarchal Western white worldview and concept. So we believe that we can live in this man's world and integrate whatever he's bringing to the table with what our ancestors had. Can't happen. Cannot happen. And as a matter of fact, it is an insult. We dishonor the memory of our ancestors when we try to integrate these other people's culture with our culture. And almost down to the man, it is an epidemic in African spiritual community, black spiritual community. So there are some that are purists that understand that if they want our spiritually cultivated ancestors and the original elemental spirits, helper spirits, to work with them, they cannot violate those principles. They can't pollute it with these other ideas, gods, concepts, so on and so on and so forth. And that's something that we really need to look at. I mean, I'm not going into detail, but the tradition I'm in, even if I wanted to juju somebody, I couldn't. I couldn't work a spell and have some sister sleep with me. They don't play that. There are rules and there are regulations based on divine order, and if you step outside that box, you'll be warned harshly, then they'll leave you. And once they leave you, you're left to these wicked spirits. And the overwhelming majority of these people out here, unfortunately, because I talk to them, I hear other priests talking to me about what's going on, they're dealing with wicked spirits. Because if they weren't, they wouldn't be able to engage in some of the things they engage in initiating whites, and I can go on and on and on. So those are the differences. So it behooves us to find out who the original spirits and find out how to return to our original, let's say, spiritual concepts, spiritual ideas, spiritual groups. Because if we don't, we're going to continue seeing the mess that we're in right now. And this is why, not trying to, cut anyone off, I had to specify the differences between voodoo and Vodou. Of course, people interchange them, but that's not good. It's not good at all.
Sounds good. Sounds clear. Understandable. Now, are you familiar with the Palo Mayombe system?
Yes, most of the... Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I mean, and do you see that as a possible way of getting to a more rootsy understanding of African traditional spirituality in general?
Not at all. Santeria, Palo Mayombe, you can go on and on and on. These are all systems that are working with wicked spirits. This is what I'm taught. And when you look at them, most of the diasporan spiritual traditions, that's what they do. We had to survive. We had to, in some cases, disguise what we were actually doing. So we added in different pantheons from different areas. And from what I understand, that's just not acceptable. Not in a system that's functioning according to divine order. Now, it's not going to stop people from doing it. But what happens when you're in Ile and there are priests in there that are getting paid to juju people to, do stuff outside of divine order? What happens when that goes on within that group and it's unchecked? Is there a spiritual penalty to pay for the whole group? How can they work with the same spirits when you have individuals in there that are engaging in this kind of behavior? It's got to affect the whole spiritual body. So that is the issue with most diasporan spiritual systems. And I don't expect everyone to agree with what I'm saying, but clearly there's a problem. I've been a member of the Pan-African Spiritual Practitioners Network for about 2 years, I guess. And I've spoken to many, many, many priests and priestesses, especially the sisters. Now that you brought it up, I got to bring another point up.
Please do, please do.
In most cases, they are rife with patriarchal wannabe brothers. And I've had it out with many brothers, and come to find out, they really don't even know what patriarchy is. They think that patriarchy is a man running a household. It's so much more. Patriarchy and white supremacy are two sides to the same coin. Our ancient ancestors were matriarchal, matrifocal, and matrilineal. But it does not mean that the men were effeminized. It's just that we understood the power of the female and what she brought to the table. It didn't take, listen, there's not a single one of us that didn't come into this world through a female. How can we disrespect that? How can we think that that is less than us? And so you have brothers that are talking this African spirituality, but yet they're dominating the sisters. They feel like the sister's place is in the kitchen, working with the babies. The man's place, he's the ruler, he's the king, and this is rampant with brothers. Let me give you an example. Senegalese sister was over my place maybe about 2 weeks ago. And my queen was getting her hair done, getting some braids in her hair. And, she's sitting there for a few hours. So, she saw me, tending to my son, changing his diaper, blah, blah, blah. My queen asked me to fix me some food. I mean, instantly went fix her some food. I do what I need to do at the moment. The sister looked like she saw a ghost, the Senegalese sister. And so I saw the look on her face. I said, "What's wrong, sister?" She said, "Listen, most men won't do that. They feel that's a woman's thing." Problem, brother. Because if anyone, and I had to pull out on a couple of brothers, check out the Diop has a book, The Cultural Unity of Black Africa, The Domains of Matriarchy and Patriarchy in Classical Antiquity, that really breaks down what patriarchy and matriarchy is. Matriarchy is not a man being subjugated by a woman. See, that concept of subjugation or dominant, that's a Western concept. We didn't have those kinds of things. Even in ancient Kemet, the pharaoh was only legitimate because he came through the female line, or either he married into the female line. It was matrilineal. It was the female solar blood that mattered. Men were just the figurehead, not dissing the pharaoh or anything, but it was the female that was behind, in terms of the power of that seat. And once again, I remind every brother listening, you got into this planet through the womb of a female. The first meal you ever ate when you came out of her womb was from her breast. I tell people, and some brothers debating this, is foolish to me. Child can wrap his lips around my nipple for the next 200 years. He ain't getting no milk. You understand what I'm saying? It's not going to happen. So we need to stop lying about this. Men can give up breast milk. Stop that foolishness. You know better than that. Women can't give out no breast. We don't have the equipment, the gland. We don't have it. So my point is that if we don't return to the honoring, don't get me wrong.
Yes. We
all have been damaged by our sojourn, our Ma'afa. We all have been damaged. So I'm not saying that the brothers and sisters in the West or even in Africa at this point are rooted in their cultural container that we originally were in. We're all damaged. So even our reference points sometimes are Western. So we don't understand that. So we have this Western idea that we have to control the woman. The woman's less than us. The place is in the kitchen, all this kind of foolishness. We need to really study our social systems pre-colonial. I'm not saying that everything from Africa was perfect. I'm not going there. I don't have no grandiose view of what it was. But we did have certain things in terms of our social systems, our cultural things, that are so far superior to what we have in the West. And we need to get back to that. You know what I mean? Absolutely. We need to empower our females, because the female is the first teacher of the child. Don't get me wrong. We're public enemy number one only because we black men should be in a position of protecting their families, their children, so on and so on and so forth. So if you want to get access to the family, of course you're going to attack the black man. But at the same time, black men have to acknowledge that we have internalized patriarchal values and study what patriarchy is. Just don't guess. We think, you know, there's brothers that hear brothers like me talk, and they think that I'm a feminist. Feminism is not for black women. First of all, the feminist movement was funded partly by the CIA. And I always say this, for those that think I'm lying, the average white feminist, unless she's a lesbian, marries who? They marry white men. So white feminists are not remotely concerned with destroying white supremacy. They just want a piece of the pie. You understand what I'm saying? So how can sisters get up with that and think that they're sisters in a struggle? Don't get me wrong. Women are oppressed by men. But one group of men has the power, the white men. The other group of men are powerless. And because of their fundamental powerlessness, they feel they have to dominate the woman. So we have to get out of that. Study our systems, our spiritual systems, our political systems, our cultural systems, and try to reconstitute our families. But it's not going to happen. I would say 80+% of the black men that I talk to and meet have patriarchal values, and a lot of times they don't even know they have it. So our charge is to study the differences between patriarchy and matriarchy. And I asked the brothers to get that book, Shekanta Dips. It's a light blue book. It's called The Cultural Unity of Black Africa, the Domains of Matriarchy and Patriarchy in Antiquity and Classical Antiquity, and he breaks down what each system is. And I guarantee you, once the brothers really understand the difference between matriarchy and patriarchy, it's going to change their minds about, you know, how they deal with their sisters.
Oba Anpu, you're teaching and we're loving it, but please, would you give us your contact information? We have questions coming out of the wazoo, and we're not going to be able to get to all of them.
That's okay. Generally, you can contact me on Facebook, Oba Anpu. Inbox me, and I'll return to anyone that, you know, feels they need to reach out and contact me. For you host on the program, I'll give you my personal information, but you got a lot of kooks out there, and I don't know if the enemy's listening, and I don't want my inbox flooded with, you know, foolishness. So Facebook is good. I can always delete the page if they overwhelm me, but Facebook, you can catch me, Oba Anpu.
Excellent, excellent. I have just one question for you. I need to know for my personal knowledge. Then I'm going to give you over to Brother Ifawumi, and he's going to ask you some of the real questions so the listening can continue. I'm at that age where I had the experience of seeing Dr. John Henry Clark and Dr. Ben and some of the others. Now, we know a lot about these brothers as activists and their public persona. But you've had unique opportunity to sit at their feet, to study with them, to be around them. Let me throw out some names, and would you give us some information on these people that the general public doesn't know?
Sure, if I can.
Okay. Of course, well, Kwame Ture, the former Stokely Carmichael. Did you have the experience of being able to sit with him personally?
Well, one time I met him through a brother, John Reeves, who actually had me enlisted in the organization. Most of the people that I name when I say I sat at their feet, it's not like we were good friends. I spent 3 years at the First World Alliance. Yes, I did meet them. Some of them I did sit down with. Some I have, actually all that I met, I have their books autographed. The First World Alliance was like school to me. So when you go there, depending on your consciousness, you absorb certain kinds of information. You're around the African energy. You're around conscious brothers and sisters. Being a member of ASCAC, pretty much the whole First World Alliance was members of ASCAC. So yes, I did have a chance to rub elbows with them, have personal conversations. I never got to know them as good friends. I mean, these brothers are always traveling. I'm not from Harlem. I'm from Connecticut. So I don't want to give the impression like you was hanging out at their house every day, because that's not the situation. But when you're around someone that for 3 years when you are in organizations with some of these people, I've been to Dr. Jeffrey's home. I also was a member of a group called the Black Holocaust Council in New Haven, Connecticut. We hosted all of these scholars, including Dr. Khalid Abdul Muhammad, who I was personal friends with on a one-on-one basis. So for most of them, though, I have met them. I have sat down with them. I was at First World off and on, and other places in New York, not just First World Alliance, but that was the mama, that was the home around these people, and I did have a chance to learn from them, to experience their energy, to hear them speak in certain cases of intimate moments and things that they were going through. I remember when the hoopla happened around Dr. Jeffrey speaking in Albany, Empire State Conference, and these Jews pretty much, was pissed off. He just told the truth. He didn't tell any lies. He didn't say anything they hadn't been saying for years, but there was one of these spies in the audience, and they went, to the media and all the rest of it. So Dr. Jeffrey said took a trip over to, I believe it was Ghana, and when he got back, it was a firestorm, so it had to be a couple of hundred of us went to the airport. Professor Smalls, the Sons of Africa, you name it, the whole First World crew. It was a bunch of people. We all went to the airport, and we made sure that Dr. J was safe. We formed a circle, because there was, ADL outside shouting, these people are crazy. They shot into his office at City College. They loosened his mama's tire on his car. So this is not nothing to be jumping. So I have actually seen some personal things that happen with these people, but I don't want to give the impression that, we were best friends, because that's not the case. So I can only tell you but so much in terms of what I witnessed, but I will say this about all of the scholars that I mentioned, that I have never in my life witnessed such confidence, such dedication, such commitment to the liberation of our people. Now, having said that, I have to open up another can of worms briefly.
Okay.
One of the things that did hurt me after I began my sojourn in consciousness, I also began to look at our health. And one of the things I noticed that the overwhelming majority of our scholars, even though they dedicated themselves to studying intellectual development, so on and so on and so forth, very few of them gave as much attention to their health. And they were terrible in terms of some of the diets that they had. So I admonish all of our people right now, don't just engage in intellectual pursuits. Find out what foods we should eat to maintain our health. Because as far as I'm concerned, too many of our scholars have checked out early, strokes, heart attacks, so on and so on and so forth. I'm saying all that to say that we must have politics, we must have spirituality, we must have culture. But at the root of what we do, we should also find out what food is good for the African body, the African constitution, and start giving up some of these processed foods, because the body's supposed to be a temple, and we got to take better care of ourselves. I hate that Dr. Clark was blind. When I first met the brother, he wasn't blind, but he went blind. Dr. Ben's health is terrible. Most of these scholars, they're not really in good shape. And Amos Wilson checked out early, Dr. Khalid checked out early, Dr. Bobby E. Wright checked out early, Asa Hilliard checked out early. I heard Asa Hilliard died from malaria, and I know something that would have cured him in 24 hours. So we have to begin to educate ourselves in terms of our health. What good is it going to do if I'm the smartest man in the world and I drop dead from a heart attack?
Ashe. It is 4 minutes to the hour, and you are listening to the ANU Asafo program with this week's special guest, Oba Anpu. And you're with your host. I'm Brother Wole Ifa, and my co-host, Brother Ifa Wumi. And we are learning a lot about the process. Your lessons are clear and concise. And we thank you for that.
Thank
Brother Wumi,
Yes.
are you ready to pose some of the questions that we all want to know but kind of afraid to ask?
Of course I am. And Brother Oba Anpu already know that I just always keep it real.
Yes, sir.
Question, Brother Oba, you know you my brother from another mother.
Yes, sir.
We always keep it real.
Absolutely.
But the question that I have, and also for the community, is does the voodoo prohibit the practice of homosexuality, pedophilia, and these other types of sexual disorders that are so prevalent in the diaspora? Every elite temple is affected somehow in the diaspora, and I would like to know, how does every Buddha stand on this occurrence?
Absolute violation. Everything you named. Not acceptable for any reason whatsoever. I actually find it amazing that we live in a day and time where they're trying to make it normal. Now, let me be clear about something. All human beings deserve the respect of being a human being. I am an inveterate heterosexual male, but you do not see me walking down the street in Speedos with one of my nuts hanging out, flexing my muscles, talking about how much of a man I am, do you? Not necessary. I will say also that this movement to normalize homosexuality is a massive global psyops, psychological operation. Most of these movements were given birth to during or right after the destruction of our movement for liberation. They were designed to supplant our movement for liberation. Let's be clear about that. I do not think it is proper for anyone to want to do bodily harm to someone because of their sexual preference. But at the same time, your sexual preference is personal. I don't even like to see a couple, male and female, out in public shoving their tongues down each other's throat. That's fine. I don't want to see that. That's personal. It's private. You go somewhere and take care of your business personally, private. So I don't care what a person's sexual preference is. That's their personal business. But when it comes to spirituality, absolute violation. And if you say that every Ile is engaging in that kind of behavior, initiating people that continue that kind of behavior, I guarantee you they're all dealing with wicked spirits. And we don't want to have anything to do with that. It's partly why we're in trouble. The only thing that matters is life, the creation of life. This is, if it were not for the creation of life, we wouldn't be here talking right now. I don't mean to be vulgar, can a penis and a rectum create life?
Oh, no.
How about two vaginas? Can that create life? Now, you can talk about in vitro. That's the white man's science. That's not our science. That's Frankenstein stuff. The only combination that can continue life is a male and a female, period. And there's no way in the world that anyone can have me embrace two men being together or two women being together.
But is there a spiritual cure? We know there's a problem that exists, but is there a spiritual cure?
I am not sure about that. I think that the cure would be that individual recognized that behavior was aberrant behavior and that behavior was outside of divine order. If that individual wanted to be a priest in a clean tradition, that individual would have to make a lifetime commitment not to engage in that kind of behavior. So let's say even if I had a cure, if that person's heart is not in a place where they understand that they can no longer live that life anymore, the cure is not going to help them. They have to, in their core, they have to want to stop. for spiritual reasons or other reasons. Unfortunately, that's easier said than done. I haven't seen any success personally. I haven't. I'm hoping that I can, because whoever that individual, be he male or female, if they actually succeed, then they can be an example to others who are struggling with that. But there are some that are absolutely happy with it. That's where they want to be, and I don't have a problem with that. But don't tell me that it's sanctioned by anybody's creator, because that's nonsense. And this is what I use as a barometer. I've challenged people on this. There's all kind of rumors going out saying that African people engage in that. I challenge people to show me any historical documentation of a scholarly nature that says that we engage in that behavior prior to being exposed to these Europeans and Arabs and so on and so forth. That has not been met to this day. No one has been able to give me documentation. There's some recent people saying we did it, but it's not based in history. Not at all. We had rites of passage. Males were males, females were females. Even if there were, let's say, some type of hormonal imbalance in one of our people, they knew that behavior was so taboo, they would never try to make it normal. So even if there were individual cases, it never became normalcy, and it was never accepted from the tip of Africa to the top of Africa. That's a Western thing. The first signs of homosexuality that I can see, we find in the ancient Greeks. And historically, I read the book. I think it's Herodotus' book, too, Euterpe, where he's discussing, Socrates. And they were saying that the majority of the statesmen in ancient Greece believed that the only true love was between a man and a man. That they pretty much felt that a woman was just used for procreation. Believe it or not, you got Christians running around here, agape and agape like it's a good thing. Guess what agape was? Agape was the Greek. You usually see a grown man with a beard with a boy sitting in his lap riding on his penis. That was agape. Man to boy love. Straight up. Yes, and you got people naming their churches after it, their groups after it, their movements after it. We need to understand, we can't take someone else's cultural container and just run with it. You don't look at what they say. It is you study history and you see exactly what it is it was in the beginning, because they changed so many concepts and ideas. When they originally created the concepts and ideas, there was no need to change it. It was a creation right then and there. They told it like it was. Then it gets to a point when it becomes politically expedient for them to change the concept of it. But the root, the foundation of it is what it is. Homosexuality, bisexuality, or the brother said dissexuality, none of that was accepted or is accepted by a truly clean African spiritual system, period.
I appreciate that, Brother Oba. At this time, we have to take a short break, and when we come back, I have only one more hot-button question to ask.
Yes, sir.
All right.
Greetings one and all, and thank you for listening to ANU Asafo this Sunday. I am now bringing you the ANU Nation announcements on this beautiful segment of ANU Asafo. We want to first thank you for tuning in once again and being a supporter and participant in this journey of the Asafo as dictated and governed by our ancestral call. We would also like to thank our Chief Jugna, Haru Yuya Asan Anu of the ANU Spiritual Order, and head instructor of the Sedulu House Spiritual Center for his continued guidance and support. Look out for the new student forum that will be created on the seduluhouse.com website. That is SADULUHOUSE.com. This forum will be exclusive to the students of the ANU Spiritual Training Class Series. Chief Jugna Haru Yuya Asan Anu will also offer free as well as supplemental classes to registered students and the general public. And now for our upcoming shows. Please tune in next week on October 13th when we will have the amazing Kwesi Ra Nahim Pata Akan. And on October 20th, we will be bringing you Mwalimu Baruti, the author of Complementarity, as well as Homosexuality and Effeminization of African Males. He will be discussing homosexuality in traditional African religious settings. On November 3rd, we have Olowu Faseye, who is the founder and head priest of the Faseye Institute for the Study of Nature, in which he will discuss holistic approaches to healing the mind, body, and spirit through African spirituality. Also, if you are an Mfundi and would like to participate on the ANU Asafo show, please respond to the link on the ANU Spiritual Training Facebook page or email omilade@seduluhouse.com. That is OMILADE@seduluhouse.com. Also, in other happenings, please check out the newest release from ANU Publishing, Natural Hair for Young Women, in which Felicia Terrell ANU discusses holistic approaches to natural hair care for young women. Natural hair care for young women can be found at anu-bookstore.com. That is ANU-BOOKSTORE.com. Also, look out for ANU Publishing's forthcoming book on shell readings, which will cover the Sacred 16 Major Odu and the casting of the Meriden Lagoon. As always, please make sure to tune in to Chief Jugna Haru Yuyasan ANU during his Foundational Fridays broadcast, which airs at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Blog Talk Radio. If you or someone you know has a background in spiritual sciences and is committed to bringing a broad spectrum of spiritual and metaphysical information to an international audience, please contact us at anunation.org. That is ANUNATION.org to become a co-host for the channel Enlightenment and Transformation. That concludes our announcements for this Sunday, and now back to ANU Asafo.
Okay, it's 9 minutes after the hour, and you are listening to the ANU Asafo show with this week's special guest, Oba Anpu, and I'm your host, Bole Ifa, and my co-host,
I'm Brother Ifa Wumi Oshundele, and Baba Oba Anpu. I really enjoyed our converse thus far. But I have one question that I need you to answer either personally or either through your tradition. Yeah. And then, can a white have a black soul or a black spirit? Please explain this to me, because that's a ruling thing that's going around in the diaspora. When I meet some whites in the tradition, say they have a black soul, and I find that confusing. And my Ori does not agree. But the question to you, can you please answer that question for me?
I can tell you what I have been told. It's not something that I did divination on. But I have been told that, let me put it to you this way. There are some who look white, right? But they're not. In that case, yes. But if they are truly white, it's not possible. Not possible. So yes, there are some who understand this. There's the miscegenation factor. There are plenty of black folks that have just blended in. You know what I mean? They just made sure they got with somebody lighter, brighter, and down through the generations they pass for white. It would depend on that issue that I just talked about. There are a lot of whites or people who look white. You got phenotype and you got genotype. Sometimes phenotypically they might look like one thing, but if you look at them genetically, there's something else. So in my estimation, this is my personal opinion, I would think that would be the deciding factor right there.
Okay. Now, a question that I have. Now, I have some friends who are biracial.
Yeah.
Now, those biracials who are basically several generational biracial, opposed as in the Louisiana, where you have octoroons who were several generations of mixed in with white.
Yeah.
Now, would you ever suggest that particular person actually venerate that white ancestor who may have committed a rape in that family line, in that bloodline.
We've had this discussion in the PAN, and there are some who venerate just as much their Caucasian ancestry as they do their African black ancestry. My tradition would not allow that, period.
Okay.
I mean, they're very strict. There's some things they're just not going for. That's one of them. No white nothing. I mean, it's just not something that I could accept personally even. That's another reason why I really was drawn to this tradition. It just hit me at such a deep level. This is like what I've been looking for. I didn't like the compromising position. I didn't like the fact that, whatever was politically correct at the time, these so-called spiritual organizations were going along with it. I didn't like the fact that they were infiltrated with all kinds of crazy people. I didn't like the fact that there was, pedophilia and homosexuality. I didn't like any of that. I just could not commit to it. When I saw that kind of behavior, I instantly backed up. But once I found out about this tradition, Huye Vodun, and that they function according to divine order, the tradition functions according to divine order. Divine order is the only modus operandi. I really appreciated that, and I got in at breakneck speed. So to answer your question again, brother, for my tradition, no venerating whiteness, period, hands down. No excuses, no compromising.
Another question that I have right here is, the question is, at what point does the Buddha, the Orisha, or Obasam leave the shrine? There are some violations in which they may end up leaving the shrine. Can you share with us some of those violations?
Yes. Anything that would fall outside of divine order. Some that would come to mind automatically would be homosexuality. And I'm not saying this in any hierarchical order. I'm just going to mention them. Homosexuality, lying maliciously, cheating, I would say definitely pedophilia, dishonoring your spiritually cultivated ancestors by paying homage to whiteness, of course murder, things of that nature. The basic things that most of us know we shouldn't do clearly are outside of divine order. So the laundry list would be probably more than we have time to detail, but the core things that we're dealing with. Once again, I had mentioned earlier, and I brought this up outside of the question I was asked for a reason, because it's coming to me intuitively about this money thing. We know that there are symbols on these dollar bills. We know that the European engages in spiritual sciences to enslave the entire planet. Once again, thousands of years ago, when we had our traditions and we were initiating one another, the white man's money didn't exist. So we didn't use his money for initiations because his money didn't exist, he didn't exist. Let's jump to now. We live in a time where he's dominating the globe. Those of us in the West that use his money have his money. He created that money. He knows what spells, symbols, whatever's on that money. What effect, if any, does it have when we in our spiritual systems are exchanging someone else's tool that definitely has symbols and spiritual stuff in it? Definitely negative, because the money is fiat money. It's not even made by the government. It's a private institution. Federal Reserve is not federal. What effect does that have, if any, on us when we're exchanging? Let's say it was some kind of a spell in each and every dollar. What happens when I pass 10,000 of those to my godfather or whatever? What happens, if anything? We need to ask that question. As a matter of fact, I would challenge any priest or Babalao on here right now. please do the divination on that. And let Brother Ifawunmi know whether or not that my query has any validity to it. It's just a question I'm asking. I'm not saying I know, but I think we need to check that out. We need to find out. We just can't keep blindly, exchanging this man's money around, making his money the main thing that gets us in or doesn't get us in. We got to have a certain amount, and for this, we got to pay for this, we got to pay for that. And I'm not saying that some things cost. I mean, if you have tools that are going to be used for your initiation, sure, you have to get those tools. There's no way around that. But I would think that if the divination comes back that there's an issue, that there are spells on his money, then I think we need to find out some other bartering system. And whether it's gold or whatever, I mean, gold is natural, it comes from the ground, whatever we may use. We need to think about that, man, because I think it's strange, brother, that our spiritual systems now, they say that there are more Yoruba traditional practitioners that are white in America than black. Because the white people got the money. So we need to question that. We need to ask those questions, man. Matter of fact, it bothers me that we don't do divination, those of us that have the power, on any of these issues that we have, instead of, thinking about whether it's politically correct in society or not. The spirits know the truth. You understand what I'm saying? So if we consult, ask the spirits whether homosexuality is accepted by them or not. Now, the only problem is if you're dealing with a wicked spirit, it's probably going to say yes. I mean, if you just had sex with a 10-year-old child, you're dealing with wicked spirits. So if you ask that spirit whether homosexuality is accepted, it'll probably tell you yes. That is the danger of doing things outside of divine order. If I do anything outside of divine order in my tradition, the spirits are going to leave me.
I understand, and Ashe. Now, another question that I have, Oba,
yes, sir,
is when you mention the initiation of whites.
yes,
You said if there's initiation of whites, that cannot possibly be an Orisha, Obasa, or Buddha, or Loa, that will allow this violation to occur. So, in the continent, on the continent right now, a lot of that is happening. That's it's a step right up. Once you got your money, step right on up. There's some places here in this country as well. A step right on up. So now that will make me kind of leery as to going to some of these different houses to be initiated when initiating whites, and to know that the Orisha or the Loa or Obasam is not even there. So I would be kind of worried about something on my head that's not supposed to be on my head.
We have to ask the question, why would someone from a complete different historic and genetic background abandon their ancestors and their spiritual beings for somebody else's? Why? What would make a person do that? That's the question we need to ask. What is it about our spiritual traditions that are attracting whites so much? And what is it about us that we embrace them faster than we embrace our own people? Is it the money? Those questions have to be asked, Things are not equal here. There's a overt world that we see walking throughout our day-to-day lives, and then there's a covert world. The overt world is like the tip of the iceberg. The covert world is the rest of the iceberg. We say occult, but occult just means hidden. Black people, period, worldwide, need to learn about the occult. And when I say occult, I mean hidden, those things that are hidden. Because there's one thing that they'll present in open public as what they're about, their beingness. But when you look underneath that, you see a whole different animal. I cannot believe for the life of me that these whites are coming en masse, joining these African spiritual traditions for altruistic reasons. I don't believe it. I don't believe it one bit. History says that don't make no sense whatsoever. So we need to look at these things, brother, because we need to use our spiritual power. That's another thing. We need to use our spiritual power to liberate our people. If we don't use whatever spiritual power we have to change the condition of our people, to get some real power, it's about power relationships, then what good is it? I am sick and tired of seeing flyers about this conference and that conference and all these, spending all this money generally at a white institution, spending all this money on the gear and gas to get there and whatever, and our people are in the trouble that we're in. It's almost like entertainment now. This is what it's become. And I'm not in this for entertainment, man. I'm in this to liberate my people. You understand? And I understand the only way for that to happen is to return to our original spiritual traditions, Orisha, Obosam, Neteru. That is the only way. There's no other way around that. And so if we find that certain kinds of behavior is a violation, we got to leave it alone. If not, you're going to be left to the wicked spirits. And yes, they do have power. They're not as powerful as the divine order spirits, but they do have power. So you can still do some of the stuff that you did when the good spirits were behind you, but there's always a price to pay.
When is it? I look at the community as like the universe. Yeah. Now, with the issues that our community have really been suffering from police brutality, or even being publicly lynched, yes. Particularly the Trayvon Martin situation that had happened. At what time do we in the spirit community, across, like Obama says, reaching across the aisle, either reach across the aisle to the Buddha or to Akan, and we come together in front of our altars and our shrines for divine justice? You know, our ancestors have given us the tools. Yes. They give us the technology as well. When are we going to have the heart to use them?
Let me say this, brother, and I can only speak from my personal experience on this issue. As you know, you and I met in the Pan-African Spiritual Practitioners Network. There are over 600 members in this forum. Darmon Holland and myself, yourself, Brother Maurice Vega, and a few others have posed this question. I will tell you this. Every time that question is brought up, crickets. Yes, crickets. And so I don't know why, because I haven't spoken to majority of the members there. But I know that generally if a post comes up with some foolishness, you might have 200-300 posts on that one thread. But when we ask that question, and a few others, and forgive me if I don't mention your names, you know who you are that asked the question, so I don't want to dismiss anyone. But there are some of us that have asked that question, and every time, brother, the forum goes silent. So I don't know if that's a spiritual thing. I don't know if it's an issue where fear sets in, but it appears to me that there's something, maybe of a spiritual nature, blocking us collectively from making a collective move. Because you're right, brother, this is what I think should happen. Those who really want to see a change should put together a group of spiritual warriors. And at least once a month, you have a collective ritual, either for a group or for an individual, whether it's financial, whether it's whatever the issue may be. Everyone goes to their altar, their shrine, and they put in work for that person or that group. Every month we should do that, because I guarantee you the white folks is doing that every day. I would say every month as a start, and then maybe it can, because they're doing it every day. They got symbols and sigils everywhere. We can't watch TV. We can't read a newspaper. We can't do anything. There are even spells in the barcode, brother. In barcodes. They got spells in barcodes. This divination was done on this. They got spells in barcodes. And there's not anything that's bought in commercial world that doesn't have a barcode on it. You know the Dodge Ram, that's nothing but the Baphomet, man. And you could go on and on and on and on. You know, CBS and NBC, there's spells everywhere. So we need to get serious about this, man. I mean, every time I see a flyer about a conference, it kind of pisses me off. And I'm saying this because I don't have to be there. I know that nothing is getting done. I know that we're not talking about using this spiritual power to liberate our people, man. Who needs it more than we do?
We need to, brother.
So that was a brilliant point you brought up, brother. I think that it's past the 11th hour at this time, and if we're serious about doing what we need to do, then I think we need to do that. We need to do divination, consult the spirits, our ancestors, to find out the path that we need to take. But I'm absolutely certain that we have to come together as spiritual warriors. And I say warrior, I'm not excluding the sisters, warrioresses, but I'm including them also as spiritual warriors to get things done. Because we're not going to do it. The physical is not going to cut it. We ain't never going to have more bullets and guns and bombs than these people. It ain't about that anyway, but that's just not the route we're going to take. That's not the route we need to take. You know, I mean, spiritual power is much more powerful than that. Any gun, bomb, or anything else they have. And we need to latch onto it. But how can we latch onto it when our systems are polluted with Islamic stuff, with Christian stuff, with, you know, I don't understand. How do we even think that the ancestors are going to listen to us and work with us if we're dealing with the enemy? We're in our temple meditating, praying, or whatever, and we got some cracker kneeling down next to us. I'm not trying to be funny, but listen, man, they just shot the sister in D.C. Now, first of all, the whole story stinks to me. You know what I mean? There's too many confusing things going on. The bottom line is she was a 20-some-year-old mother with an 18-month-old baby in the car. You understand? And what they're not talking about is they were doing military drills at the same time. We don't know what this sister saw to make her think that her and her baby was in danger. Now, if you're in the car with your baby, then let me just give you an example. You're in the car with your baby, and you see some stuff going on that think that maybe your baby, what would you do? Would you just sit there? Or would you hightail it the hell out of there and run over any and every goddamn body that got in your way? So my point is, even if she did have, you know, postpartum depression, they didn't have to shoot this. They shot her, 11 times? You know what I'm saying? And then, what worse than that, I don't know if y'all know, and I'm sorry for digressing, but this is important. On Capitol Hill, one of the white dudes get on the mic, and he asked for a standing ovation for the mall police, and he got it. I'm talking about a resounding standing ovation that lasted at least a minute for murdering a 20-some-year-old female with her 18-month-old baby in the car. This is who we're dealing with, man. I don't know why anybody would want to sit side by side with these folks. Don't get me wrong. I know there's some good white folks. But it's up to these good white folks to handle the bad white folks. If you're serious about being a good white person, you can't just be a good white person and you sitting under the arm of white supremacy and it's cool because you're still supposed to be a good white person, but you're doing nothing about white supremacy oppressing the rest of the world. So you handle your people. You handle your people that's doing dirt, then maybe we can live together side by side. You want us to handle our dirt in our community, that's our problem. Well, you handle yours. There's only a couple out there that's doing it, like, you know, white boy Tim Wise. And no, I don't forget he's a white dude. He's still a white dude. So if he wound up saying some racist stuff, I'm not surprised because he's a white dude. He's doing the best he can, but he knows he's still benefiting from white supremacy. He himself said he wouldn't be in the position he was in if he was black, saying the same thing. So we have some work to do. As far as our youth, and that's the question that was brought up, how can the spiritual systems of black people help our youth? The sad thing is we should be introduced to these spiritual systems in our developing years. Unfortunately, most of our youth have already been corrupted, and there are very few of them that are going to actually change their behavior because it's been ingrained in them at this point. I'm 55, but I'm absolutely shocked at how any reasonable human being can convince themselves that you walking around with your butt crack out is cool, it's acceptable. But yet we know there are millions of young black men that have bought into that. At this point, everyone knows it's the prison culture married onto the rap or street culture. We know this. You know, they take your belt off, they take your shoestrings off, so on and so on and so forth. But my point is that we have too many young men that feel it's okay to walk around with their drawers outside of their pants. Now, if I was to step to one of these young men, no matter how respectable I did it, 9 out of 10 times I'm going to get some flack. You might get one that say, okay, brother, you know, you're telling the truth, but then he's got to worry about his boys. You know, they're all walking around with their butt crack out, so if I come there with my butt crack not out, then there's going to be a problem. But we have to deal with that. We need systems, but we need funding, brother. This is what bothers me. How in the world do we think we can get anything done broke? Really? How do we expect that's going to happen? We need funding. Now, we're not talking about being a capitalist, but we need funding if we're going to get anything broke. If we had any kind of movement, even if it was a paramilitary movement, the moment the white folks stop the food from coming in, what's going to happen? You think we're going to still stay there with all our guns and whatever behind the barricade with no food? These people are in charge of our food, our water, our shelter, everything. And for those that think they're free, and excuse my French, I say to them, how are you going to say you're free and you can't even wipe your ass without calling Mr. Scott tissue? You can't do it. So these are issues. In my personal opinion, I'm not happy. I'm totally dissatisfied living in a world where these people have that much power over me and my people. I don't like it. That's why I'm about to jet out of here first chance I get. I'm out of here. I'm going to Africa. You understand? The country that seems to be the only country that's got some balls is Zimbabwe. You know, Mugabe ain't playing. He ain't taking no prisoners. You know what I mean? He shut them down. You know, so, but my point is we should be allowed to grow, develop spiritually, mentally, physically, unencumbered by these white folks, man. It's never going to happen in America. They got their hand up your behind and down your throat, and they ain't taking it out. You understand what I'm saying?
We need our awake elders. We need the awake elders. You know, the problem is proliferating like that is because the elders are silent.
I agree. And we don't know why. We don't know what they've seen. Once again, I bring up the overt-covert scenario because I have also studied the intelligence community. I've also studied the history of intelligence, you know, by some of the architects of American intelligence. And one of the things that we have lacked, no matter what kind of movement we had, to my knowledge, we have never had an intelligence organization or association that engaged in counterintelligence. So therefore, here we are playing above board, even if we have our little meetings, but we don't know the intention and the capabilities of our enemies. Therefore, it's easy for them to infiltrate anything we have and destroy it from the inside. Any people that have total freedom on their mind must, by necessity, create an intelligence organization. And I've asked time and time again, if we have one, somebody name it. I can't. So now, is that excluding spirituality? No, because in the African tradition and the black tradition, it was impossible for us to even imagine a concept of spirituality being separated from anything else in our lives. But at the same time, at this point, we live in the physical world, so we must also take into consideration those physical aspects of our existence. We can't just think we're going to focus on spirituality and not the physical. If that's the case, let me initiate in one of these organizations without any exchange of physical money. You think I'll get in? Nope.
Nope.
So this is an issue that we as a people need to deal with, because there are psychological operations being carried out on us on a daily basis. Some of these killings, brother, these extrajudicial killings, I've said this before, I believe are ritual initiations. I brought that up on a number of occasions. Now, I can't prove this. I can do divination on it. But I believe at least some of them are. Because it's an epidemic, man. It's an epidemic. You know, they have all kind of means to stop their sister's car. You know, they could have just circled it with 4 cars. Where was she going to go? You understand what I'm trying to say? They can bust the window open. As the 4 cars got her car enclosed, they could have busted the window open and tased her, anything. They didn't have to shoot her 11 times, man. You know? Then they going through her apartment in Stanford looking for bombs and anti-government. I mean, just all kind of foolishness. I'm saying all that to say this. There's something fishy about that also. But back to my main point. If we had a spiritual tradition where certain groups, their job was to do divination on any issue that we had, we wouldn't have to sit around and guess, is this, is that? We would know, because the spirits are not going to lie to you. They're not programmed to lie to you.
They never lie.
We don't see that happening. We just don't see it happening. And I see, you know, Babalao this and Baba this, you know, online, and they talking about this conference and this, and nobody's talking about using that spiritual power to get our people where we need to be.
None. Collectively.
Oba Anpu. Oba Anpu. Oba Anpu. It has been a delight to sit with you this week, sir. It's been a privilege and an honor.
Yes, indeed.
I'm honored. Thank you very much, brother.
And we all know this conversation has not ended. We're only going to adjourn for a while. But we want to let our audience know, those who have a whole bunch of questions for you and haven't been able to get in right now, we want to let them know that you can be contacted on your Facebook account at the same name, Oba. That's OBA, Oba, and ANPU. So, Oba, we want you to stay in touch with us, and we want you to continue sharing with us. And if possible, come back as a guest, because you are always welcome here. And the things you said have been crucial, and we want you to know that you're quite appreciated here.
Thank you very much, and it's my pleasure, brother.
We will have you back. Brother
Thank you
Oba
much.
Anpu,
Appreciate
we
it.
will have you back.
Anytime.
I say. Okay, now. Okay, so we want to let our audience know, and of course we want to thank our brother Ifawumi Oshundeli for conducting the Asafo hot button questions, and that segment of the show has really been hot. And we expect it to be that way whenever Brother Ifawumi steps on the scene. Now, we also we have another segment left, and it's our cultural spotlight, and it's going to be hot as well because Brother Ifawumi is back on the scene. Brother Ifawumi, you're there.
Yes, indeed, I am, Brother Wale.
Would you help us a little bit more about the fine tradition that Oba Anpu was talking about, the Voodoo tradition?
Yes, I will. First of all, the indigenous religious beliefs and practices of African people include various traditional religions. Voodoo means spirit, and that's a word in Afan and Yewe languages. It's an indigenous organized religion of coastal West Africa from Ghana to Nigeria. Voodoo is practiced by the Ewe people of eastern and southern Ghana and northern central Togo. Voodoo cosmology centers around voodoo spirits and other elements of divine that govern the earth, a hierarchy that ranges in power from major deities governing the forces of nature and human society to the spirits of individual streams, trees, and rocks, as well as dozens of ethnic Voodoo, defenders of a certain clan, tribe, or nation. The Voodoo are the center of religious life. Patterns of worship follow various dialects, gods, practices, songs, and rituals. Voodoo recognize one god with many helpers called Orisha, Obasa, or Loas. A single divine creator called mainly Mawu or Nana Baluku is an androgynous being who in one tradition bore 7 children and gave each rule over a realm of nature, animals, earth, and sea. The creator embodies a dual cosmogonic principle of which Mawu, the moon, and Lisa, the sun, are respectively the male and female aspects, often portrayed as the twin children of the creator. Lisa, the male, Mawu being the female, were married twin siblings of Nana Baluku. They are the creator deities, occasionally combined as Mawu Lisa, which is an androgynous deity. Mawu Lisa created the world and made it orderly, then made plants and animals and humans. The entire process supposedly took 4 days. The first day, Mawu Lisa created the universe and humanity. The second day, the earth made suitable for human life. On the third day, humans were given intellect, language, and the senses. And finally, on the 4th day, mankind received the gift of technology. Mawu's youngest child is Legba, was to remain with her and act as a go-between with her other children. In some clans, he is young and virile, while in Haiti, he takes the form of an old man. Other deities might include Mwata, goddess of the water, Gu, ruling iron and smithcraft, Zapata, who rules diseases, and many others. All creation is considered divine. Therefore, it contains the power of the divine. This is how medicines such as herbal remedies are understood, and explains the ubiquitous use of mundane objects in religious ritual. Contrary to popular belief in West African Voodoo, spells are not cast upon someone. Voodoo is only a spiritual path in which an important part is devoted to the realm of the ancestors. Even if the origin of humanity and the world are explained in Voodoo mythology, it is not a centered question of the faith. The followers believe that the answer to such questions is beyond human reach. Priority is given to the ancestors with them, interceding on behalf of their families and descendants toward the Almighty. If an Almighty Creator is recognized in the Voodoo pantheon, the believers do not address themselves to that particular deity. Only the Loas, the messengers with the help of the dead, have that access. In order to communicate and pray, every clan and sometimes each family group have their own Voodoo, sometimes called an Ansanyi, as Voodoo can also be translated as the spirit of those who have passed before us. The family Voodoo is often associated with a known higher spirit of the standard pantheon, but is distinctive to each family. This distinctiveness of the clan Voodoo is also an assertion of identity and worshiping process specific to a family collective. In Togo, about half the population practice indigenous religions, of which Voodoo is by far the largest. European colonialism, followed by some of the totalitarian regimes in West Africa, have tried to suppress Voodoo, as well as other African indigenous religions. However, because the Voodoo deities are born to each clan, tribe, and nation, their clergy are central to maintaining the moral, social, and political order and ancestral foundation of its village. These efforts have not been useful. Recently, there have been moves to restore the place of Voodoo in national society, such as the annual International Voodoo Conference held in the city of Ouida in Benin that was held since 1991. What is more devastating is that to attribute this practice of voodoo religion only to Benin and Haiti would also deny the millions of Africans throughout the diaspora their birthright. By negating the more than 51 different ethnic groups and spirit pantheons brought from the surrounding territories of Benin, who developed and practiced and brought this tradition to the New World in their blood. In truth, voodoo is 20,000 years old tradition which predates Christianity, Islam, and Judaism, replete with all of the elements that would define it as a religion proper. With ancestor veneration and service to the nature god at its core, it is arguably the oldest religion in Africa. During the Mayafa, in the New World, it became absolutely essential to rip the African from all familiar ties to their native Africa. This especially included disconnecting them from the main source of their ancestors' spiritual power and inspiration, which were their religions. The Europeans both abhorred and feared African religions because they worked, not through dark magic and trickery, but rather due to the intimate relationship of service, devoutness, and worship the Africans cultivated over centuries with their gods and divine ancestors. And since these religions are connected through the ancestral blood of the Africans, this power could not be exploited and sold as a commodity. As a result, African religious practices were brutally suppressed. Their spirits were labeled demonic. Their sacred shrines were destroyed. Its priesthood murdered. They were prevented from honoring their ancestors, erecting shrines, performing initiation, carving sacred images, and making sacred drums. The Europeans' fear was such that harsh laws were enacted and enforced through imprisonment, torture, and death to prevent the transmission of the sacred knowledge to future generations. One might find in some denominations of voodoo superficial aspects of Western religion, liturgy, and indigenous practices incorporated into his local practices. An example of this in the New World is the use of Catholic saints or the use of communion by some shrines and denominations in the voodoo religion. However, the saints are not the voodoo gods, nor is communion necessary in the actual practice. Today in the New World, Haitian and American have blended with some elements of both indigenous and Western Christian beliefs and practices. However, this is not the case in Dahomean voodoo, as it is practiced in Togo and many parts of Benin and southwest Ghana. Additionally, what is important is to keep in mind that if one were to remove the indigenous and Christian elements from the voodoo religion, it would not lose any of its integrity, for all the major aspects of the voodoo religion throughout Africa and the diaspora remains uniquely African. And that's what I had today on the voodoo tradition. Brother Wale?
Hey, Ashe. Thank you so much for that, brother. Ifawumi Oshundeli, you are truly a teacher. And of course, we'd like to take the time to thank our special guest this week once again, Oba Anpu. And again, for all of you who may still have questions for Oba Anpu, he can be reached at his Facebook account of the same name, Oba Anpu, and that's spelled traditional spelling OBA, capital ANPU, Oba Anpu. And Brother Ifawumi, that was a very informative presentation on the Vodun tradition. Excuse me. It's one of the most interesting things because, as you correctly pointed out, the origin of it is in the Dahomean Empire, which is now Republic of Benin, and it's all through Togo and Nigeria, and it's right next to Ifa and the Yoruba land. But unlike some of the traditional forms, the Vodun tradition has sprouted so many different lineages here in the New World, throughout the Caribbean, been in the U.S. So that's a very important tradition. And like our guest was saying, we need to be aware of our roots, to go back to the beginning. Start from scratch. It's always interested me how we African Americans tend to have some issues at times communicating with each other, and it would seem logical that we would start at what we all have in common. And what we all have in common, that ancestral tradition that you talked about. And in the Carolinas, there is a lineage of the Vodun tradition, right?
Yes, it is. You have the Oyatunji village.
Yeah, I've heard about that village. But what's interesting is the Gullah corridor you were telling me about, which extends from, I understand, the southern part of North Carolina to the northern part of Florida.
Yes, indeed.
On the coast. Yeah, that's quite a few people.
Right.
Quite a large. Yeah.
It's called the Gullah Belt.
Okay, the Gullah Belt. I think if a lot of African Americans look to maybe a generation or two or three back, they would find that they're either, most of us have some tradition coming out of the Carolinas because of the importation of our enslaved African ancestors through there and through my home city of New Orleans.
Yes.
So, and both of those places have Vodun traditions.
Shame.
So, Vodun is something we need to look at quite a lot. And I
first religion.
I thank you for that timely and informative presentation. We want to thank our guest and inform our audience about next week's guest. And that's going to be another Asafo Hot Button Question event.
Yes, it is.
Baba Koifi. And I understand you're quite familiar with Baba Koifi as well, right?
Yes.
Right?
Yes, indeed, Brother Wale.
We only have
outstanding speaker.
Mm-hmm. He's an outstanding speaker?
He's an outstanding speaker, and our listening audience going to really enjoy him on last week. Today was a great day with Oba Anpu on today, but on next week we are really raring to go.
Sounds like there's going to be a lot of fire in the air, a lot of hot button questions back and forth. And I'm really looking forward to it, and we're all going to be depending on you to to match fire with fire.
It's going to happen.
And get the best out of Baba Koifi, for our audience. So we thank you again, brother. And for all of us, but first, for our esteemed Chief Jegna, Haru Yuyati Asan Anu, the entire ANU Spiritual Order, and, of course, the staff of ANU Asafo. And that's Sister Omilade Anu, Brother Ifa Wumi Oshundeli, and me, Brother Ifa, I'm calling myself you now, Brother Ifa. We all want to say thank you. We appreciate what you're doing, and we appreciate the opportunity to learn and share together. We want to thank you, the audience, and ask you to definitely come see us next week. So on that, we say Odabo.
Odabo.
We thank you for your listening support and urge you to become an active participating member. For all those listening, if you'd like to gain a clearer and fundamental understanding of the ANU Order, be sure to pick up the book, Grasping the Root of Divine Power. To find out how you can become a student and member of the ANU Spiritual Order, please visit us at saduluhouse.com. That is SADULUHOUSE.com. Also, if you would like spiritual readings and assistance in your life as it pertains to your spiritual well-being and your divine purpose, please use the contact and scheduling forms to schedule a consultation with our Chief Jegna, Haru Yuya Asan Anu. Those forms are located at orishareligion.com. That is orishareligion.com, as well as are at theduluhouse.com. Also, sign up for the ANU newsletter for the latest happenings in the ANU community. The newsletter can be found by going to anunation.org. That is ANUNATION.org. If you'd like to become an on-air guest or sponsor on ANU Asafo or any of our other broadcasts, please be sure to contact us at questions@anunation.org. That is the word questions@anunation.org. Thank you for your continued support, and be well.
The great band, the great legendary jazz band, which has nurtured so many musicians. Well, anyway, the Big Chief is, Donald Harrison was born in New Orleans in 1960 and grew up in a home environment saturated with the city's traditional music of brass bands, parades, modern jazz, R&B, funk, classical, world, ethnic music, as well as dance music. His connections to New Orleans roots were deepened by his father, who was the Big Chief of the Congo Square Mardi Gras nation before Donald took over after his death. These Indian nations are a merge of the African and Native American groups that got together, both doing oppression and enslavement in this country in the 17th and 18th centuries. Now, the Big Chief is very well known. He's a groundbreaking musician. He recorded an album called Quantum Leap last year, which musicians and critics alike have termed the next step in jazz. So he also is the creator of the term nouveau swing, which is a style of jazz that merges modern dance music like hip-hop, R&B, soul, rock, and combines that with jazz and the New Orleans traditional music. So, in my personal opinion, the best saxophone player in the world today is a New Orleanian named Donald Harrison. Now, some can make an argument, and it's legitimate, that Bradford Marcellus, the brother of Wynton, might hold that distinction. But either way, if you can make it out to this lecture, and I'm sure he's going to give a little performance, it will be a truly, truly special and inspiring thing. And now, back to the global scene. Out of tragedy comes a new hope. A new cultural blog was formed Thursday of last week, and it was in response to a tragic plane crash in Nigeria. The blog is called Yoruba Culture and Tradition, and it is an African Yoruba tradition and culture blog aimed at enhancing the beauty and understanding of Yoruba culture, and most especially to increase the awareness of Ifa and Orisha spiritual systems. Now, this blog will be using verses from the Odu Ifa, the sacred Ifa, sacred scripture rather, and relating it to occurrences that happen in our individual everyday lives. Yoruba words and proverbs will also be used as a basis for topics covered. Now, this blog is started by the esteemed Araba of Oshobo, Ifeyimi Elibuibon, his daughter, whose name is Ifayemi C. L.A. Buibon. And in her own words, she started this blog. She decided to write this blog on this topic because of an incident that occurred in Nigeria. An airplane crashed carrying the body of the late governor of Ondo State. He was headed on his way home to be buried, and the plane was full of his relatives, and the plane crashed, killing many and severely injuring several others. But luckily, among the survivors was the governor's son and the son of former Nigerian President Olusegun Obasanjo, who holds several distinctions in that country, including leading the country 2 times, one time as a military man, one time as a civilian, being the first person to pass on leadership from one civilian administration to another peacefully without military involvement. And it's a blessing that his son survived, and we're very happy for that. But in this first edition...
And listen, so we may learn so that we may teach. We will cultivate self-reliance. We will struggle to resurrect and unify our homeland. We will raise many children for our nation. We will have discipline, patience, devotion, and courage. We will live as models to provide new direction for our people. We will be free and self-determining. We are African people. We will win. We will win. We will win.
Ashe. Ashe, Ashe. Moyuba. Thank you, Brother Ifawumi. Wow, here we are again for another week. This is my favorite place to be, and you're my favorite person to be talking to. How you doing this week, brother?
I'm doing great. I had a great week myself. I'm glad to be here today. We have an exciting show. I'm just so motivated.
Excellent, excellent. Well, let's get straight to it. Unfortunately, we start on a somewhat positive, a somewhat somber note. Late last week, in the last couple of days, a ship carrying African immigrants to Europe caught fire and capsized off of the coast of Italy. And this was Thursday, and it killed at least 114 people. And as it spilled hundreds of passengers into the sea, many of whom drowned because of not knowing how to swim, officials said. Over 150 people were rescued, but about that same number of people are still unaccounted for. So the death toll in this accident has passed 100, Italian officials have said. So we all here at the ANU Spiritual Order join our lead instructor and spiritual guide, Haru Yuya Asan Anu, in sending out our heartfelt condolences to the victims of this tragedy, their families, and all of the African people who risk so much to try to find a better way of life and opportunity outside of their homelands. Brother Ifawumi?
Yes, that really touched all of us here. It touched the community throughout the world for this tragedy that has happened. And many of these people, many of them were fleeing persecution. They said the boat started in Libya. So we all know exactly what has happened in Libya just in a few months ago. A lot of these places, are just unsettled right now, just not ready for to be up and running once a revolution has taken place. And I do feel so hard, or even pregnant women, drowning out there in the water. That's a horrible thing.
It is. And Sister Cynthia McKinney, former candidate for president and congressperson out of the state of Georgia, has announced on her blog online that it's her understanding that the U.S. is still dropping bombs in Libya today. So they were leaving a war zone in their home countries, going through a war zone and trying to make it to a better thing.
But this is what Africa brought to Africa.
I see. Well, moving on to a lot happier news. the big chief, Donald Harrison of the Congo Square Mardi Gras Indian Nation of New Orleans, is in New York City tomorrow. And that'll be Monday, October the 7th, 2013, at 6 o'clock p.m. at the King Juan Carlos I of Spain Center Auditorium at 53 Washington Square South, New York University in Manhattan. Now, the big chief is going to be taking part in an interdisciplinary seminar entitled Afro-Latino Soundscapes. Now, a lot of people are not familiar with Donald Harrison, although he, along with his former partner in crime, were the trumpet and saxophone players for the Jazz Messengers.
Bring down the power of love, I say. Bring down the power. The power of love, I say, is the greatest power. Stop hell and damnation. Bring down the power. Love to heal a nation is the greatest power. Destruction is blowing over this land. And now the earth is trembling with man's oppression of man. Now the time comes to sit down and rediscover what's life. Show the world the true meaning of real love, power, not strife. Must bow. Unity is the banner, so come together. I say, and this love is for freedom, it's growing stronger each day. Bring down the power of love, I say. The power of love, I say, is the greatest power. Love to heal a nation. So rejoice in a rhythm of celebration. Come on. Lift your voice with a feeling of satisfaction as one. And let we move with a purpose, all freedom lovers. Hold tight. Stepping out of the darkness with one direction inside. Bring down the power of love, I say.
Good week and welcome to ANU Asafo with your host, Brother Wole Ifa, And my co-host?
Brother Ifa Wumi Oshundele.
It's so good to hear your voice again, brother. But
yes, indeed.
Mm-hmm. But before we get into that, shall we do the pledge?
Of course. We remember the humanity, glory, and suffering of our ancestors, and honor the struggle of our fathers. We will strive to bring new value and new life to our people. We will have peace and harmony among us. We will be loving, sharing, and creative. We will work.
Of the blog, the sister L.A. Bouibon explains the concept of afua, which is afua occurs when the spirit of the dead is not at peace or is angry at the living. Afua refers to a situation where several untimely deaths may occur within a small time frame after the death of a person in a family, household, or town in general is not celebrated correctly. The correct traditions are not observed. So Sister Ifayemi C. L.A. Bouibon has distinguished herself by carrying on the fine tradition of her fathers, the Araba, in reaching out and teaching. And we need that so much in the West, and we just want to wish her all the best with that and urge everybody to go and learn from her. We'll have the connecting links to her and to Big Chief Donald Harrison's performance. We'll have that hopefully in the chat room, but if not, we'll have it in the archives versions of this. And finally, we want to let you know that we have a special guest waiting on the other side of this break, and his name, well, I'll let you talk about him, Brother Fab, because you're familiar with Oba Anpu. Will you tell us a few words, and then we'll go to break?
Okay. Well, I've been knowing Brother Oba Anpu for a few years now, and I actually met him while in the process of Pan-Africanism, and you wouldn't know uptown and downtown brother that you will find in Brother Oba Anpu. He has embraced African spirituality, and I think he started out in the Kemetic tradition. It's the same way that I did. But he eventually, through evolution, eventually went and embraced the Voodoo tradition, and under a great priest, and he has grown by leaps and bounds. And I just, it's so many words I can use to describe this brother. He's intelligent, well-read. He's one of these brothers who was a hands-on kind of guy. He can point you in the right direction. And he can guide you in the right direction as well. And, so few of us in the community have these type of qualities. He looks at everything. He doesn't look at everything in the box. He thinks outside of the box. That makes him a very special person.
He sounds like somebody we can't wait to talk to. But let's go to break right now. And we'll come back with Oba Anpu.
According to legend, there was a time when Earth was pure, free of all evil. Unicorns, pearl-paved pathways, skies so bright, tonight no problem. When only positivity polluted the conscience, and something went wrong. My name is Insight. Let's go. Waterfall slows down, freeze, the sun leaves. Cumulus clouds overshadow the area. A cave had appeared with a glowing interior. Inferior primates appeared at the seashore. Search for the knowledge in a natural resource. Mind-bound power in the force of a narrow path leads to sacred travelers that expanded to a huge community. Tree clouds out make room for you and me. Machinery we use spread more pollution. Scientific breakthroughs form illusions. Positive intentions make the negative easy. See these from a spectacular species. Reach keys in life mixing your own formula. Curing the conscious, develop the medicine. Practical principles expose better things. It's the God.
welcome back. It's 19 minutes after the hour, going on 20. You're listening to the ANU Asafo show with your host, Brother Ifa Wumi, and I'm Brother Wole Ifa. We're about to sit down and talk to Oba Anpu, who is the most fascinating person. Oba Anpu is a Pan-African nationalist who believes that our liberation lies in gaining true power. That's through economics, politics, intellectually, and most of all, spiritually. Oba Anpu believes that the only way to achieve this is through a profound and deep knowledge of self, rooted in an African-centered etymology and pedagogy construction, solely based on an African paradigm. And most importantly, to return to our original spiritual systems, like our Voodoo, Orisha, Neteru, Obasom traditions, and our spiritual cultivated ancestors. Oba Anpu is also what is known as an autodidact, which is a self-taught person. He shares that distinction, as a matter of fact, with the Oraba of Osobo. We just mentioned him and his daughter, Ifayimi Elebuibon, another self-taught person. Oba Anpu is a child of the First World Alliance of Harlem, New York, which is the mother of all African-centered lecture circuits in the U.S. He was there where he spent 3 years sitting at the feet of some of the greatest minds in the African-based movement, including people like Dr. John Henry Clark, may he rest in peace, Dr. Joseph Ben Yakinan, Dr. Ben, Dr. Leonard Jeffries Jr., famed head, former chair of the African Studies program at City College of New York, Professor James Smalls, Dr. Marimba Ani, and Dr. Francis Krauss Welsing, to just name a few. Oba Anpu began building his library, or arsenal of books and videotape, and he joined several African-centered and Pan-African organizations. He's a former member of the Association of for the Study of Classical African Civilizations, the All-African People's Revolutionary Party, which is founded by the late great leader Kwame Ture, also known as Stokely Carmichael, rest in peace, and the Black Holocaust Council of New Haven, Connecticut. He heads a study group which Nehesayu, but it means in the ancient Kemet language, awaken the people. This study group also serves as the Bridgeport, Connecticut chapter of the Association for the Study of Classical African Civilization. So without further ado, we'd like to say welcome to ANU Asafo, Oba Anpu.
Welcome, family. Welcome to Baba Ifa Wunmi Oshendele and Baba Wole Ifa. Welcome, welcome.
Ashe, Ashe. Oba Anpu, please tell us a little bit. That was a pretty long introduction, but you've done quite a lot in your time. Would you please fill in some of the gaps? Tell us a little bit about your background that we may have not already covered, especially when it comes to your current spiritual walk.
Yes. I started out in the Pan-Africanist movement, and we all go through phases as we achieve certain levels of knowledge. I'll say this, that my introduction to, and I want to make a distinction, big difference between voodoo and vodun, huge difference. Voodoo, especially Haitian voodoo and others, use spirits that are not traditionally our original spirits, which in tradition I came up in is like a violation. The